This is killing you. This is parasitic. It's insidious. It's ruining your game. It's ruining your win rate. It's absolutely obliterating your red line. And it's causing you to fail to achieve your goals as quickly as you could. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Red Line Rescue. It's long overdue. It's about time we do this session. Mark's red line has looked a bit like a really fun slide to go down for a while now, and it's about time we put a stop to that and get this little thing leveling off here and actually being somewhat flatter. Now, Mark, we discussed before we started recording that you said the red line had been accelerating downwards, but what's really happened there, as I explained, is that when you started folding more, i.e. you stopped making like some pretty horrific calls, the red line started absorbing some of the shock there, kind of like an airbag in a car. It started like absorbing the shock, and that was a good thing because you don't want to be like smashing into the dashboard. But, and that's why the blue line like really thanked it for it. The blue line was really grateful for that shock absorption. But because the red line had started off as such a passive and kind of leaky thing, it looks really bad now that it's doing what it's doing its job. It's folding in spots where you need to fold, but it's not doing its job in the more aggressive situations where you need to be winning more pots. So today our MO is very simple. We're going to look at times that you check the river, and we're going to try and figure out where are you not finding the right bluffs, not winning enough pots, just not basically getting your fair share of the money. So what we're going to do in today's video is basically tear through some hands pretty quickly and just see what we can unearth. This is very much going to be a diagnostic sort of session. So we're just going to launch into these hands. We're going to see what comes up diagnostically and see where you're maybe being too passive. So King 10, we go for a check, we go for a check, limp pot, we have showdown value. This is not a spot where we want to be aggressive, and we need to basically just define the specific thing we're looking for here, which is to look at every hand individually and not to be like, oh, the coach said I need to be more aggro, so I'm just going to start betting randomly because I'm trying to be more aggro. That's like a really big leak that some students actually adopt after coaching sometimes, and the coaching can backfire. Why are there so many limped pots? Another limp pot with showdown value. I think that's standard. Here we come to a raise pot. Ace 10. Check, check. Overbet. And check. Okay. So this hand is a bit curious. What are your thoughts on the turn play here? Anything that you want to remark on here?
I'm not sure about my turnover bet. I don't do this too much after check, check. I know that if I had bet flop, I would be comfortable overbetting this. Somewhat comfortable because it does complete. Some straights get completed, but only 7-8. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable enough overbetting this, but that's normally after betting flop. So yeah, I'm not really sure. This isn't a node that I'm very confident on.
Okay.
Check, check, flop. What do you do on the turn?
Yeah, so part of the red line work is also just the nitty gritty, like having the right sizing, having the right line in certain spots, avoiding polarization errors. A lot of these things are instrumental as well to the red line and of course the green line. My main objection to this would actually be that I think you have quite a lot of showdown value, blind versus blind, after flop goes check, check here with ace 10. And I think I'd just be checking. If you had a hand like ace 3, ace 4, like I can definitely see this being a thing, but I think we're a little bit too far up, and I'd like you to pay attention to this stuff in future. Like, are there spots where you're actually turning the middle of your range into a bluff when you don't need to? That can cause extra red line losses and stuff in certain situations. Well, it actually probably helps the red line more than anything, but it's bad for the green line is what I should say, right, when we do that. So this one I would check, ace king, ace queen I would check as well. It's just quite far up in your range. It has a lot of showdown value at this point. I don't think this is a horrible play. When you've checked flop, absolutely you can have an overbet range because you've checked flop out of position. When you check flop out of position, you're still uncapped. You've still got strong hands in your range. If you check flop back in position, that's no longer the case, and then you'd want to be very wary of like using overbets there. But this is no problem.
My overbet bluffs here are ones without showdown value, so lower end flush draws.
Yeah, straight draws, you know, all kinds of stuff, just not something with showdown value. Yep, I'd rather just like have a naked straight draw here than ace 10 high when I'm doing this. And yeah, I think river is probably... This is a card that's quite a lot better for you than villain, but it's not terrible for villain, given that they can call some straight draws and stuff on the turn. But I'd imagine this is a really good card for range. It's probably going to be one of the few river cards that's actually overfolded on this node. And so even though you do have terrible blockers, and GTO would say never bluff here, you might find that bluffing here is not as bad as it would appear. I mean, I think it's still probably a give up, but I just wanted to point that out. So that hand is more about polarization and just making sure we know where we are in our range and when we have the showdown value element of that. There's no way this hand is ever really going to be a bet, right? You can maybe like block bet river really small here or something like that. It's probably not horrible, but there's still a limited pot that checks all the way through, right? So that's one option. I'm not going to spend lots of time on hands today. I'm going to be kind of rattling through really quickly. Okay, great spot to talk about. So check here. Yeah, so this is a huge problem, and I'm really glad this came up. This is exactly what I'm looking for. This is like the dream, like the absolute gold mine when it comes to fixing the red line. You are hijack here. You have a very strong opening range pre-flop, therefore, or quite a strong opening range pre-flop. The flop comes queen jack 5, and I'm guessing your default is to do a lot of checking on flop here, which is fine because you've been cold called. But at this point, you need to reevaluate what's going on. What's going on range wise here, range versus range, and what is your hand class like here?
Range versus range, I think villain has capped his range by checking behind on the flop. Still has a very condensed range of probably quite heavy in under pairs at this point that didn't want to bet that on queen jack 5. The king probably is a better card for me than villain. They would have a lot of ace suit. What I tend to see cold calling or flatting on the button is suited aces. But
right, let's stop a second here. There's not a lot of that. Like, combinatorically, there are not many suited aces. They just aren't. So while you will see them, saying what I tend to see as suited aces is extremely crooked, and it's like framing their range way more towards that than it actually is. The most common thing that cold calls in the button is a pocket pair, combinatorically. There are other things too. There are suited aces in the range, but when you say I see suited aces, maybe you mean there's a few more of them than there's meant to be, right? Or
I mean,
like
sorry, what I mean to say is relative to suited kings. I don't see suited kings. So
well, no, sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Okay.
If there's any suited hands, they're suited aces. So I think when I think that through, then I'm behind the pocket pairs and they'll fold, have a lot of fold equity. So this is probably a missed opportunity to fold away those.
So you have a big range advantage now on this texture, agreed, and the big nut advantage, and you have the bottom of your range, pretty much the bottom of your range, and you have redraw. So this should be a very high frequency bluff, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you're just auto checking here and you're never bluffing here.
Yeah.
That's the big problem.
Yeah, I'm making a mistake of thinking ace is showdown, and it's not against that range. It's not.
Blind versus blind, where ranges are super wide and flop went check. Ace high could be showdown value. Not on this board though, and certainly not when you're hijack. This is very, very near the bottom of your hijack range, and therefore it needs to be bluffed at a really high frequency. But if it doesn't get bluffed on the turn, you've committed river blunder theorem on this river, right? So river blunder theorem, just for anyone that's not taken Carrot Poker School yet, of course everyone will take it eventually, I wish, is the idea that when your range has an advantage and you end up on the river and you have a very low showdown value region of like part of that range, it will be higher EV to bet than it will be to check. It's not that you don't have any showdown value here, it's just that you have way less than what you would normally have, and you have a big abundance of fold equity that you need to capitalize on. So this check shows a fundamental, I'm going to be kind of harsh here, it shows a fundamental misapplication of the grade 1 Carrot Poker School theory of bluffing when you have a range advantage and limited showdown value. This is probably widespread. This is, you're not even noticing this when you're playing. It doesn't stand out. It's like a kind of benign feeling thing. It's not like you play it and you're like, oh no, that really hurt or whatever. But this is why we have to dig sometimes in these sessions and not just rely on the big pots or the marked hands that you wanted line checks on. This is killing you. This is parasitic. It's insidious. It's ruining your game. It's ruining your win rate. It's absolutely obliterating your red line. And it's causing you to fail to achieve your goals as quickly as you could. So how does that sound?
Yeah, that makes sense. And this is widespread. I've no doubt. And when it shows down, I do go, oh, fuck, should have fucking bluffed there. This is ringing true with me that I'm not spotting them in game in the moment. I'm spotting them afterwards a lot.
That's good.
But I'm not enough to fucking do anything about it, obviously. So
it's a huge deal. Maybe it just doesn't feel strongly like a huge deal, but it's a massive deal, and it's very important to fix this. Yeah.
What's going wrong in my head here is that I think the ace has showdown value. That's the issue.
It does. It does.
Not enough, though.
No, because you have so much fold equity that betting is better than checking.
I'm not comparing it to the amount of fold equity I have.
Yeah, and it's not like that's kind of apples and oranges. You can't directly compare it, but you can say when I have a certain amount of fold equity, I may be making so much money by bluffing that I make more than I do by checking, even though I win sometimes by checking. So saying I need to check whenever I've got any showdown value on the river, that's only true on neutral or unfavorable worlds. It's not true in really favorable worlds like this, where you've got a colossal range advantage. And you preserve that by checking all the way to the river. Villain checks back, as many times as you check. So, well, practically. And you should be uncapped. You're checking flop with range probably or close to it. So actually flop you've not even capped yourself much, you've not even really done anything. Turn, you cap your range a bit, but you still have a big advantage on this river, and yeah, this is criminal. This is river blunder theorem. Basically, I have a theory, which is that students who frequently exhibit signs of river blunder theorem are never going to win. They're never going to move out of the stake they're at. That's my theory, and that's harsh. And if we hadn't already done the intro clip, me being harsh, that would be it. But there's a second one. It's harsh, but it's true. Like, river blunder theorem will kill you. It will ruin your win rate. It's bad. Okay, so I've kind of beaten that to death, and I will not stress it so much next time it comes up, but look out for that pattern. All right, king jack. That's fine. Yep, I have no problem. Villain kind of polarizes there, so we don't want to be betting river for value. Their range is too pulled. Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, this is probably all right as well. Checking back turn, checking back flop.
Value.
It's just a bit weird that you don't bet flop here because this is like a kind of 100% betting spot, but I do sympathize with it because villain is like short and might like jam on you sometimes. You have showdown value. That yeah, they're probably going to spew a fair bit if you check back here. So I think this is actually good, this hand. And we are looking at times you've checked river here, so we are moving. We've kind of filtered intentionally towards times that you were passive. That said, I do feel like you're too passive in general. I feel like your aggression factor is too low. Your 1-win soft flop stat is too low. Be interesting to look at what those are in a future session, perhaps. But many of these are going to be okay. Yeah, so yeah, good call. I like it. Good call. This is an overbluff node. Villain waits until the river and then bluffs. You have ace high, you have a bluff catcher. This is a really good call to see you make. So you've no problem making the calls. I don't think you're like overfolding. I think you're just under aggressing when you have the chance to. I think that's where the red line leaks are coming in mostly.
This is river blunder theorem, isn't it?
Well, no, because you're big blind, you have a range disadvantage here. Not a range advantage, but I think the turn should be a very frequent bet. Exploitatively, you're missing a trick here, and I want you to tell me what that is.
They're checking back on that flop. That's a flop that they're going to check back a weaker range than they should be.
Yep.
I have some equity with the 10 jack.
Yeah, so I think you have a kind of optional turn bluff in GTO terms, right? The 4 is quite a good card for your range. Whenever the region that's around like the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 becomes strengthened, it's typically going to favor the big blind player. But take that with it for what it's worth. Definitely you can bleed to the nut gut shot here in GTO. It's not like a mistake to do so in game theory. And then the fact that they're checking back not enough flush draws, not enough good ace-x, not enough stronger hands, not even enough one club hands probably. You're just going to do really well here by taking an exploitative line at these stakes of betting the turn and over betting the river or something of that nature. So that's what you should be doing, and you should be really forgetting about your blockers because by far the most important part of this hand is the exploit that's available. So while GTO would probably say you can check the turn here, and while GTO would also probably say you don't want to bluff 100% of the time on the river here, like there are hands you need to give up with. Is this one of them? Probably this is a hand that you can give up with on river and GTO because this isn't river blunder theorem because you don't have a range advantage here, I don't believe. I think button has a slight advantage, especially on this run out still. So that's very different to you having the super strong range against the weak one and showing down the bottom of it. Here you're showing down like the bottom of a range that's actually weaker. So the idea is that the base EV of bluffing here is break even, but in the ace-8 hand it was like wildly positive. However, given that people are too capped here and don't protect their range enough, not only do you want to bet turn and river in this spot, but as played you also want to bet river, and I'd also imagine it's highly winning. And again, we get that sort of overview of this from mass data that people overfold dramatically to check bet lines. Even though this line is overbluffed by pool, people are overfolding to this line. They're not bluff catching enough like low pocket pairs here and stuff. So this hand's a big leak. Not theoretically, but exploitatively, this hand is leaking a lot of money through missed opportunities. Opportunities not seized are equally bad to spew that we make, like losing unnecessary extra money. It's not worse to spew than it is to miss opportunities to make money. It's the same thing, it's two sides of the same coin. So food for thought, you know, if you're focusing too heavily on just avoiding, you know, big investment mistakes, you're missing the non-investment mistakes that you're making.
Yeah, I'm focusing too much on my hand and not the ranges and the fold equity that's available. That's right. What I'm missing, I think. There.
I agree. Calling, checking. I think your MO is just very placid in single raise pots in general as the big blind, like too passive. This is fine, you could also check. And I think you have to value bet river here. I would not be checking river here. I think checking river here is a big leak. This range is condensed. It's not going to bluff off, and you do still have a value bet. Don't check here. Yeah, bad check. These random river checks you're throwing in are causing big red line issues. I think if we fix this, actually, I would go as far to say, Mark, that I am flabbergasted that you're not losing more heavily or not losing over the last 40k hands. I'm flabbergasted that you're able to break even, given how severe this leak actually is in your game. I've kind of missed it until now, or not missed it, but I haven't prioritized it yet. And now that we're getting to that, we've kind of cleared our cache of like not spewing off in like all these spots, and we've got rid of those leaks. It's now time to fully address this common leak that you have here. What I would ask you about this hand is, can you paint me a roadmap about what was happening at the time and then how you're going to fix it in future? Because I think this sort of idea works quite well for you in general when we do this.
I think in game, I probably thought the river, there's a lot of missed draws here that could have been calling and may feel the propensity to bluff the river. And I might get money from those hands better by...
Okay, so that's targeting fallacy. You're targeting just one small part of villain's range.
Yeah.
That's hugely problematic. So why is that a bad thing to do? And I think this will be useful for the audience because a lot of them are going to do this as well. So how can we improve this? Well, one...
I think because it's not... You know, when they call the turn, they do condense the range to hands that aren't going to bet on the river. It's more them than... So like
draws,
clubs are probably going to bet the flop, though they're not actually there on the turn anyway, so...
Okay, they're there less often than they should be. They're not there a lot in GTO anyway. Yep, absolutely. Same with backdoor diamonds. They're going to bet flop a lot.
So combinatorically, there's more of the marginal hands that that will call rather than these hands that I'm focused. I'm targeting tunnel vision on these. Yeah, it's part of the range that isn't actually very big.
And there's a reason why targeting is banned in our Discord. There's a reason why, you know, I'm probably going to go away and tweet about it tonight that I hate the word targeting. It's shit, guys. Stop targeting. Don't fall into this trap. Think about the entire range you're up against. You have a value bettable hand against a condensed range that's mostly 9x, Jack X, pocket 10s, etc. Don't just target one random part of it that comes into your head. Go for a block bet here. Perfectly fine. Go for like half pot here. Perfectly fine. Don't pot it. Your hand's not good enough for that, but there are many bet sizes here that you can use for value. They're absolutely fine. There, I think villain needs to actually be bluffing that. I think that's like far enough down that they probably... no, maybe not actually against your large turn bet. But yeah, it's getting close. The other thing is that people may commit river blunder theorem themselves and actually under bluff in that spot when you check, because they're going to garner a range advantage there after they call your turn lead and you check river. Then they have to bet, maybe not this hand, but they have to bet like all of their misdraws and weaker ace X than this, and they may not be doing that, and that's where you may get punished even more than you would in theory by actually not value betting that hand on the river.
Yeah, so and I think population of my stakes aren't bluffing on the river a lot. Like the river blunder term is prevalent, I'd say, across the state. So yeah, that's another good reason why it's a bad idea to check.
Yeah, it's a very bad idea to check here, and we're losing a lot of EV. Okay. I mean, multi-way pot, we still have a range advantage, right? So if we get to river here and we don't hit that king, we can still bluff king 3, even into 2 people, because it's ace jack 7-5. Don't want to be too fussy there.
I get very straight in 3-way when I'm 3-way. I don't like bluffing in 3 ways. I'm
so way too general. Yeah, way too general a thought process. We need to be maybe a little bit more selective with our bluffs, but we still need to be bluffing river if we land with nothing, because the combined enemy should still be folding frequently enough that makes that profitable. If we have an advantage over each individual enemy, then we should be able to bluff the bottom of our range with profit on the river, because each enemy has to act as an individual there, and they shouldn't both just like render your bluffs minus EV. If it was minus EV for you to bluff into 2 people on the river with the bottom of your range in a spot that was good for you, it would mean the combined enemy was over defending and was being stationary, and that won't be the case in 3-way pots. Not on these sorts of lines. There are times it would be, but not there. So middle of range spots, we're never going to have to worry about that. Yeah, I think this one's fine as well. Again, just skipping through a little bit more. These are all fine. Blunder. You have to raise bottom set against the c-bet out of position because you are out of position and urgency is very high and they're betting a really merged range and they're a bad player and this is really small and there's loads of pot growth to get. This is the most urgent spot to raise a flop I've ever seen.
Yeah, I have no idea why I didn't do that.
Well, there will be a reason. Can you predict what it would be? If you did this again in the future, why would you be doing it again? Let's do it that way from a sort of like future leak prevention kind of angle. If you do this again, what's the sort of errant thought that causes that?
Well, it could have been, I'm looking at the villain stats. I may have looked at their stats and seen that they are hyper aggressive, but even still, like, I don't think it makes it a good idea. Yeah, so I had 300 hands on them, and they were barreling like 6 out of 7 turns, like 86% of turns. It's only a small number of turns, but and
okay, maybe I can let you off the hook.
4 out of 5 rivers, so they were
okay. So if this is something you would never normally do, that you actually think very carefully before doing, and you understand is like a big deviation, then I'm okay with it. But otherwise, it's risky, right? Because it would take a lot for me to want to do this. So again, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a bit of a small sample. It's not meaningless. It does mean something, but I'm
23,
not sure.
22, 17 were their stats. So 17 3-bet. So they were.
Yeah, I don't care about that so much, but I mean, they are verging on Maniac, I guess. They're beginning to get up that way. What I would really want to see there, though, to be like super confident about that, is like the fish player type. So I'd like them to be like 45-28 or something in order to like go full blown with that read. But okay, at least you've got like a defensible argument there for that.
And they check the turn, so.
Yeah, river, I think you can check raise. I think you can bet. I don't really. So this is okay because you're out of position. Like, you can do this. And then, oh my god, no, I don't know about this.
Why didn't I raise?
Actually, there is the 10 of clubs, but like.
Yeah, I saw all the draws and thought, fuck, this is 2-10.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a 10 of clubs. I thought it was just a 10, and I was like, you've got to check raise. Do you know, in that case, I think we just value bet this hand. Like on this river, I think I just prefer value betting. I don't actually think this will be bluffed a ton this run out, because it's kind of. It's just a little bit harder to, like, if he's barreling turn all the time with air, I would just think he's got a more merged range here. Right, if he's got a really high turn barrel, I'd imagine the stuff he doesn't barrel is like a made hand. So the way I would use your flop read here would be to just bet river. This is close between check raise and check call now. I guess it's just a check call in game theory, although it's a little bit sad. In practice though, people are so keen to bet their flush draws in the turn, and the raise jack and jack 9. Yeah, I think it's still raise here because I think this player is just condensed a lot more towards like 2-pair and stuff. It's close though, it's super close. I can't really decide whether I want to raise river. I feel like I do, but it's super thin, but that doesn't make it terrible. It can be like quite thin, still acceptable, right? It can be on that threshold. Yeah. But I think betting is maybe just better here, because when you have an opponent that's like really rampant with the turn aggression, when they check, they're usually going to be condensed and merged, right? Because they're going to just overbluff, right, when they've got air. So that's how you should use that read. I think you're a bit too check happy on the river in general. Like, you're just not quite like out there with the value bets as eagerly as you should be sometimes. I don't know why we're sizing 9 here. I'd usually go smaller, but uncapped ranges behind in a linear range. I don't think we need to go this big. But it's not bad, but I don't think we need to go this big. Here, I think you could actually raise because, yeah, exactly, because their range is super mergy and just like, they're not doing this with like 6s, right? This isn't a spot where you have to call and leave stuff in. This is a spot where their leading range will be really high EV. It'll be high EV draws, it'll be sets, it'll be like stuff that's trying to protect. Fish are not like leading this with nothing. They're generally leading here with a strong merged range. So I think raise is actually great here, even though you're in position. Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I love raise flop there. I think it's just super instructive because their range is so merged. Super instructive. Again,
I did think about it in game, and I thought against it. But
why did you think against it? Because we could maybe learn from that.
I wasn't clear enough that they were very they had a strong range and they were very merged. And
okay, yeah, it's just experience. It's about gaining more experience with what fish are doing. The texture makes it kind of impossible for them to have hands they want to bluff like this. Not impossible, but very unlikely. And it's so wet that they panic with their random 2-pair or set or something and just want to get money in, or their pair plus draw they overvalue or something. It's just way more likely they have something here rather than nothing, and that's why you should raise.
And block all the sets.
Let's not even get to blockers. It's true, but like, let's not even bother with it. It's just not. It's not quintessential to the spot.
Primary thing. Yeah.
It's really not. And like, sometimes people go to blockers too quickly in their thought process, and it actually ruins the thought process because they miss the broad strokes for the, they fail to see the forest for the trees or whatever the expression is. So blockers are a little bit, I would say, my catchphrase, as you know, is if you're thinking about blockers, don't. That's my catchphrase about blockers. Until you reach a certain level where you're using them properly as like swing factors, as like deal breaking factors, and not as like sole contributors to your thought process, because they shouldn't be the latter. They really shouldn't. Okay, let's do a couple more, then wrap up. 3-bet. Call. I think you can see bet here. Check isn't horrible. guess this hand is... Yeah, okay, I guess you just have about enough showdown value to check down here, and it's not a great world for you to bluff in, but it's close. Okay. I think your hand can be betting on flop or turn, you know, at some frequency for sure. Like, it's not super high up, so you may be overrating the showdown value. This is good. Right, one more interesting one, then we'll call it. Certainly there's a lot of mundane humdrum hands that get caught in a filter like this that you just have to wade through. I'm just not interested in that one. Multi-way. Okay, so here, like actually, if you're not leading a double gutter here, like this, like are you ever leading this turn? Like this feels like a suspect check, because while you can check raise this hand, you should usually be leading it in GTO terms, and I'm worried that you're routinely checking here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the multi-way thing. That's like I have a leak, I think there. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't bluff.
Yeah, that's way too categorical. We need to rein that in and actually just say, okay, I do have. I mean, you have sevens, you have fours, you have ace 10, you have ace 7, you have ace 4. You have so many hands you could value bet. There's no reason not to build a bluffing range. People are too capped when they check flop. We know this. You should be bluffing. You should be bluffing this spot, or at least check raising or bluffing. But if you're doing neither, then that's really wrong. And I think you should bluff river because you actually block weak ace X and you unblock pocket pair and king, queen, king, jack. I think this is actually a hand that wants to bluff river, even three-way. I think it's fine. You're definitely way under bluffing in these multi-way spots. So what I want to see next time is I want you to actually bring a tag to the table that shows hands in which you've fixed this leak. Proper aggression. I want you to call the tag proper aggression, and I want it to be turn and river spots where you're routinely checking before, but now you're either value betting or bluffing, you're aggressing in the right way, and you're fixing this monumental leak. This red line leak is quite severe, and we can definitely get a handle on this. I mean, like I said at the start, what we're looking to do is just really get the red line to flatten out a bit, not lose at such a rate. And yeah, I think that's the way to to do it. There we have an actual filter on, so it's skewing the graph. This is what it looked like, right? Where it's kind of very steep. So if we can make the red line, here's what we want to do. We want to make the red line look like the green line and make the green line look like the blue line. How about that? And the blue line can be way up here. It can still be winning. Let's do that. All right, anything, how would you summarize today's session? How's it left you feeling? And anything you want to say?
It's left me feeling great, actually, because this is, bar the, as you correctly, you identified early the my calling leak, and I think we've got very good protocol for that now. The last session has sort of confirmed with me that that's, you know, in places where I was just a little unsure, again it's reaffirmed that okay, I'm actually getting it. And I'm applying it pretty well, so I'm happy with that. And then this is definitely the number 2 issue I have, where I'm missing a lot of value. Like, I think if we just add up just the hands we looked at today, like that were just sitting there, the money that was sitting there to be taken off the table, if I added that to my win rate, it would undoubtedly turn around.
I actually think that this is the piece of the puzzle, the key, which is going to unlock the door to you winning. Like, we've got you breaking even, as you can see, we've got that leveled off a bit, but I think this is the piece of the puzzle that actually gets you above the 0 mark and gets the line going in an upward direction. In fact, I know it is. I'm that confident that if you keep everything else together and you fix this, you're going to be a winning player in this game, and you are going to be cruising, and we're going to, like, you know, be able to actually finish the series on a high and say we went from losing to cruising. Let's do it. Let's fix this leak. We'll be back next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pete.